Running plays, that's ish talk. You say you getting paid, that's ish talk. You see me with my babe, that's ish talk. The money in that way, that's ish talk. I beg, I beg, I beg, I beg. I beg, I beg, I beg you all.
Yo, 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 welcome to another episode of The Lord Show, Ish Talk TV, live from the DMV, doing it how it's supposed to be. I hope you got some kush at the crib, some cat in the bed, and some cash in your pocket. What more can be said? Guys, the election's coming up soon. I'm so happy this shit is going to be over. But I got a couple of DC stuff in the beginning, and then we're going to flip it to DC, and then we're going to hit Maryland University. And then we're going to get to the Hogan and also Brooks. Just want to see where they at. If you guys are, what's the latest on them. And of course, Trump at McDonald's, Kamala having trouble with black men. Ask a black guy. We're going to talk about that. Henry Marks and Nicholas Marks. They're not related, but welcome to the show, guys.
Great to be back.
Great to be here for the first time. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and you're canvassing for Hogan, or you're call banking? What you doing?
I do everything. I'm one of the Baltimore County team captains. That's where I'm from, Baltimorean, born and raised. And I'm working with the GOTV efforts as we head into early voting later this week. So yes, I do a bit of everything: phone banking, door knocking, whatever the campaign needs.
You're like a soldier, all right. Hen Dog, what you doing, man?
Right now I'm handling get out the vote for re-elect Robert White. We're gonna win every precinct and send Robert back to council for a third term at large. Other than that, I am out there phone banking North Carolina and Wisconsin, Pennsylvania for Harris Walls. They don't pay me. It's just fun.
You don't get nothing, a free Lunchable or nothing?
No, only people politely telling me to go away.
Well, you get social cues, you know?
Oh yeah, no, it's great.
Leave a like and a comment. Clips are going to be up soon. Just follow us, keep updated. But shout out to the Commanders. They're on some sort of a win streak with this quarterback. So shout out to them. It's been so long, I can give them credit. So shout out to them. You guys are Commanders fans?
No, I'm a Ravens fan.
I'm an Eagles fan.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yeah, no, we're suffering.
Yeah, I saw the game. I'm sorry, Henry.
Well, we beat the Giants by what, 25? So it's okay. But we're not going anywhere this year.
Speaking of beating, did you see the Ravens fan he was filmed assaulting a Commanders fan? Is that right? He ended up turning himself in, or they pulled up to his house. I'm not sure if you want to call that turning yourself in, but he put hands and feet. Can you guys talk about, is it right for someone to lose their job if they're just in their leisure?
This is the thing where I feel like we have this problem when we talk about crime, where context matters for some people, but not others. And we'll get to this later where, I think there is sometimes this willingness, where we talk about someone's socioeconomic status a lot.
This is a white man. Go ahead.
Right. Like, this is the point people are bringing up. Like, all of a sudden there's all this sympathy that never would have existed if he wasn't, an upper middle class. Like, what was he, like a consultant at some big firm?
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, this is pretty like value neutral. Like, don't assault people. I think is a good rule.
But he was getting hyped by other fans behind. You can hear him behind him. And he was, but he found a soft target. I'm not sure if you guys saw the video, but he picked a soft target. He's facing one count of first degree assault and 3 counts of second degree assault.
Yeah, I mean, I say this as a Ravens fan. His actions should totally be condemned. I can say that
I think he needs to
anyone
go.
who
Yeah, go ahead.
anyone who justifies violence, the people in the comments of like the Instagram reels justifying it were wrong. Or anybody attempting to turn it into a conversation about something it's not. I mean, there were comparisons to European soccer where fans often get particularly vitriolic against people of other nationalities. That doesn't have a place in any sporting arena, and I certainly think that he should have been fired. Because this was so open, and the charges were so severe. Um, and anybody who attempted to turn this into any, commentary or justification to leverage racism against anyone is obviously wrong. I hope moving forward that this is just a flash in the pan story. But anyone who was attempting to justify the behavior was wrong, and multiple players on the team came out and openly condemned this kind of behavior as well. So I'm glad that hopefully the perpetrator gets brought to justice because it's a sporting event, not a death match.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more there. In Baltimore, it's only acceptable to do this kind of stuff if you're the two-time Defensive Player of the Year, two-time Super Bowl
Oh,
champion, and a Super Bowl MVP. No, but seriously, I'm glad to see football is sort of moving to a place where this is just unacceptable. We're better than soccer fans.
Absolutely. And a lot
yeah.
of the hatred in Europe is driven by intense nationality as well. It's not even driven particularly by the same hostilities that propel the same kind of hatred here in the States.
Of course
So,
not.
I mean, when I saw this, I really didn't pay that much attention to it, to be honest with you. But it's a bad story, and I hope he gets brought to justice. And this kind of behavior should not be allowed at any sporting event. So,
Well, maybe we don't know. Context matters. Maybe it was about maybe the other guy was supporting the old Redskins logo, and maybe they got into it. We don't know what happened. Maybe the guy was scared for his life. He saw a Commanders fan. I don't know, but he
Dude,
could.
I mean, like, how to put this? If Baltimore was ready to arrest a guy like that, it had to have been bad. And either way, like, putting hands on someone isn't a way to settle anything. So I'm just glad we can sort of move on and let justice happen.
I'm just thinking about should you lose your job all because you just went off just 15 seconds. Can change you got to go back. You're going to lose your job. You're on social media, just like that. Just like that. But the Ravens, we do not condone that type of violence. We tried to save you. Maybe if you were in an elevator or something like that with your girlfriend or something like that. But speaking of doing things in small spaces, they're bringing back Marion Barry, rest in peace. He's rolling over in his grave right now, and he's not eating that pizza. And pizza, did you guys see what they did or with their new collab? Um, let's see. It's called Pizza Knots. Apparently, I'm not sure what Henry, what does that have to do with Marion Barry?
Yeah, so
People are
Mayor
saying it was
Barry,
racist.
I, I don't I don't find it to be wrong from sort of this like a race perspective.
You don't see it's
Like
wrong.
it kind of would have been funny then, but this is a man
They
that
didn't
gave his
have and
life.
pizza back then, sir.
No, no, back then it was I think H and pizza. I
Man,
remember when I was, but like why bring this out now? This is a man that gave decades to DC and has passed on. It's just unnecessary. It's crude. It's cruel, and like
from summer
I don't
school
know, you're
programs to dessert.
you're really like kicking a dead horse there. It's Just
Marion Barry's wife
totally
calls
unnecessary.
Marion Barry knots at Ann Pizza racist and disgraceful. DC pizza chain is facing backlash over its decision to name a menu item after late Marion Barry. I'm pretty sure the person who thought of this campaign or this new was a DC native, because I don't think someone from out of the city would do that. And they knew that the type of what they were trying to do. If they're a hit, they're a hit. But go ahead.
Uh,
I don't
Nick,
have
I
anything
think
to
I'm.
comment on this. I
Yeah,
think like, there's similar situations. There's a restaurant in Annapolis that does this where they name fast food items on their menu after delegates, and they are often demeaning. For example, the ones that they use to refer to Martin O'Malley all deal with jokes about taxation. But I think generally there's a place for memorializing, there's a place for lighthearted jokes, and when reading this story to me, it just kind of came off as a little bit, regardless of what I think of everybody's policies, a bit problematic in terms of disregarding people's legacies. I just don't really see the positive benefit to it. But then again, in a market system, if people choose to go and eat at the restaurant and buy the food, like that's their choice as customers. But I don't see from a business perspective how this really helps. I think, it gets you publicity, and there's some discussion about if the publicity is good or not, but I don't know if it's going to translate into revenue. So
Shame
that's the way I
on
look at it.
those black people that were probably they were the one that put this idea out, and they knew the type of thing they were going to do. So shame on them for trying to use that. And then it can't be racist because it was black people. I'm pretty sure that had the idea of doing this. Um, let's move to the Metro. Metro considers a crackdown on fare evasion as 70% of bus riders skip payment. Just let you guys know, I used to be a bus driver in my former life. I used to drive the 70 line, Silver Spring, all the way down Georgia Avenue, all the way down to the museums and shit like that. So this affected me a lot because when you are a paying citizen, or when you're paying your $1.60, $2 or whatever, you're paying your monthly fare card, and then you see somebody behind you just get on the fucking bus and just walk past you. They don't even, and as a bus driver, if you're going to get on the fucking bus, say hi. Don't just come up with a mean mug and shit. But, and then they're going to somehow get ridership back up. Once you get people in this mindset where they don't have to pay, it's going to be hard for them to make people want to pay again. But go ahead. What's your guys' thoughts on Metro and the
That's
revenue?
exactly how I feel. I feel like, I worked in transportation systems for a very long time, and on campus, I'm involved with our shuttle system. There's a general shortfall across the country of transportation revenues, even with unspent COVID-19 money allocated from the CARES Act that was signed in 2020. And it seems to me that, there's a lot of debate, particularly in political circles, about transportation as a public good. And I know that fuels a lot of the discussion about whether or not fares should be there. But at the end of the day, the money has to come from somewhere. And if you're not getting it from ridership, you're getting it through auxiliary taxes, or and it depends on how the fee model is broken up, right? But the state of Maryland is experiencing massive deficit cuts to its transportation systems, to the level that I think the legislature here in Annapolis is going to have to raise taxes to pay for it. Um, and for some reason, our governor decided not to do that in the previous term. Um, but I think that,
Your boy.
you know, there are rules to pay for. There are rules, and if you're using a good, you should pay for it. I rode the metro many semesters going back and forth between DC and College Park. I was working in Congress for an entire year. And, ultimately, if there are alternatives available for those that can't necessarily afford it, but to see people not take advantage of them is disappointing. I don't know if you should be locking people up, for life. That would be a bit ridiculous. But at a point, you have to establish that there are rules to follow, especially because the issues just compound. Um, and eventually the budget deficit in the transportation sector becomes so hard that if you actually care about things like, promoting electric buses and electric vehicles, there's just no money left in the tank to transition them from fossil fuel vehicles.
Hmm.
And I know obviously DC is not, DC is starting to have those conversations, and a lot of them are really good, but when it comes to, buses, and this isn't just a DC issue, it's an issue in Philly and New York especially, to the point that in the last gubernatorial election, Lee Zeldin actually ran on a platform of enforcing fares because the people in charge of New York had not been enforcing it. And it was kind of like a one issue campaign that he ran on this very issue, and he came within striking distance of winning the governorship in 2022, which then had down ballot effects for Republicans. So this is an issue that, like, for me, there's a clear right and wrong on. The government has a role to provide alternatives for those who can't afford the fares, but I'm kind of glad to see DC cracking down on it in some way, because I think you need to begin to establish some level of normalcy inside the system. And then down the road, we can have conversations about, how do we make the transportation system more sustainable. But yeah.
So I'll sort of paint this in a different lens. I mean, there's sort of this like basic sort of social contract aspect that as members of this, a society, we all agree to follow the same rules, paying, this paying your way for the same service is part of that. But from another aspect, Metro Bus serves a very different role than Metro Rail. Metro Rail is usually commuters. Metro Bus is the webbing that connects neighborhoods in a way that, if not available, would be extremely harmful to residents that have no other means. Um, and so if we look at this, there are residents who can and should absolutely pay. That's not all 70%, that's a big chunk of them. But part of my concern is the massive economic consequences if ridership drops 20, 30%, right? If people can no longer get to their jobs, get to their children, get their children to school, that's a really big deal. And so we need to be careful to make sure those that can pay do, and also not choking off some of the most important arteries in our district to some of our most vulnerable residents.
See, when it comes to it's the difference when it comes to the busing and in the trains, because in the trains, they can put up a fucking gate, right? That's what they're doing now in most of the
Now you got
stations
a
now.
20-inch vertical, you're getting over that.
If you're in the Olympics, yeah. Well, but on the bus, you can't really find policemen. What do you expect? A police for every bus?
Well, you want to talk about that? The cost of putting an extra person on every bus is probably going to cost way more uh, than the fares you're getting in return.
Once people know they don't have to pay, they ain't gonna pay. So I'm not sure where this revenue is gonna come. They're gonna try that shit all the time, all they want. Where I don't know where we're gonna get this money from. Bowser or the guy in VA.
Well, you know who lives off of metro services? It's the federal government. They need to step up and pay their fair share.
All right, let's get to yeah, we talked about the Marion Barry. Uh we got more when it comes to the ranked choice. But guys, leave a like and a comment. This is Ish Talk TV. We will be back with more Ish. Stay tuned, all right? Stay black. All right. We back. Ish Talk TV. We got Nicholas Marks. We got Henry Marks. They're not related. All right. Ish Talk TV. Now let's get to we are in I'm in College Park, but I go in DC often. And, I'm just minding my business, being nosy, and I see this, these signs everywhere. Got this little cherry and it says vote 83. And I'm like, what's that about? So apparently this is about, DC, Democrats, ranked choice voting. Um, but then there's this other thing that came out earlier, saying how you're not supposed to vote for 83. This is Democrats saying this. The main dude, the HNIC, DC Democrat Chair Charles Wilson, right? So he's and the people below him saying, "Yo, we don't support that," and he's saying, "Yes, y'all do." But what's going on with that? And how do you guys feel about ranked choice? Let's go with Nick.
So, I mean, I'm like most traditional conservatives on this. I think ranked choice voting would work in a perfect world, but I think in our electoral system, it's relatively unfeasible in the sense of the academic literature on this is kind of divided. There was a survey that came out in 2022 of Virginia Republican primary voters that said that they felt like ranked choice voting was a positive. But another academic study from Fairvote noted that the effect is somewhat mixed, depending on factors like city size and electoral context. Um,
Wait, hold on,
there's
hold on,
some
wait, wait,
there's
wait, 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 wait. All right, so let's be clear. Help me out. So if ranked choice, let's give an example. Let's tell the people how it goes. Okay. If my
so you
main
get a
guy,
ballot. You get a ballot,
wait,
right?
if my main guy
Yeah.
is Bernie, all right,
Sure.
and my second person is uh RFK, and my third person is Tulsi, right? So if nobody votes for Biden, I mean nobody votes for Bernie, how's that work?
Then
My second choice.
Nick, then okay, then imagine sort of a stack, like everyone that put Bernie first, their votes just get relabeled. Like you rip off the top line,
Oh, they
and
go
now it
to
just
the
says,
uh
yeah, and it just counts the same. Uh, Now it should be noted that 95% of elections with ranked choice and not ranked choice end the same, but yeah, it just redistributes it to the next choice and then the next choice and then the next choice.
but what about the dysfunction that's going on inside the party? Like, isn't that like just crazy? Like, there's nobody else but y'all, but the Dems and the Republicans. Like, what can I do?
I mean, I think it's unfair to say that there's real dysfunction. The executive committee was elected by DC Democrats and they made a decision. Now, it's one that people disagree with. It's fine, and we've showed our disagreement.
And they're confusing the neighbors, the voters, right?
Yeah, I mean, no, that mailer was a mistake. And I'm glad they sent a second one that corrected it. Um, for those of you that do campaigns, you know how expensive sending a citywide mailer is. So that was a really big step. And we're not in, the Dems are not in disarray. This weekend, Charles Wilson and the DC Democrats sent a couple hundred people up to York, Pennsylvania, Allentown, Pennsylvania, and Philadelphia, and they knocked on 12,000 doors. And you know what? They're doing it again next week. And that's because DC Democrats are united at the end of the day for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
Yeah, I agree with Henry. The DC Democrats that I know are very organized. I don't know if their attempts to door knock can save what I see as a failing campaign, to be honest with you. But we'll get to that later. But they are organized, and I give them credit. Their door knocking efforts have been very valiant in PA, and they're really hitting the urban centers hard, trying to drive up Harris's support among union voters and minority voters that she seems to be losing in most of the latest polling. The Maryland Republican Party is famously dysfunctional. Maryland, the Democratic Party in DC They effectively have a one-party rule over the area, the same way the Democrats here do. I don't think that they're dysfunctional. They just have disputes over policy. And I think Henry's right. Like we're heading towards a very close national election, probably the closest since 1960. Um, and I honestly think that, you know, them organizing for out-of-state activities is very similar to what the Maryland Democratic Party is doing. Um, I don't see any massive gulf there. And I think debating this, Proposition 83 thing is ultimately just an example of, I mean, there are Maryland Democrats that are devoted or divided over question one here in Maryland, which is very likely to pass with over 70% of the vote. And that's enshrining abortion in the state constitution. So when you come to issues like this, they're naturally going to be divisive, especially when you're changing voting procedures. So,
But
if
it's
there was a mailer that
democracy,
was sent,
guys. It's democracy.
yeah, it's a messy process. It's not perfect.
But you said there's no difference between the results when it comes to ranked
Yeah, they're
choice.
very marginal differences, to be honest.
Yeah, well, so let me put it this way. In ranked choice voting, if a candidate gets the majority, it's over. They automatically win. Most elections are two or fewer candidates. Uh, but in DC, we get some messy fields, you know. There are multiple council members and council members elect that won with 12, 14, 22% of the vote. And so in these big fields, making people's down ballot options matter will have a legitimately big impact.
And they're saying anti ranked choice voting groups saying that it could make the ballot less secure. So
By the way, I don't buy that argument. I think that argument is very poor against ranked choice voting. There are other ways to argue it. Election integrity is a huge issue in this country. There are states that have ranked choice voting. Alaska, famously, why Mary Patola is in Congress right now. It's not an issue that has ever been significantly linked with voter fraud. It is more confusing for voters, certainly, because they have to learn more about the candidates as they rank them. But
as they should.
it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to contribute to election fraud. I just want to shut down that narrative because there are some on my side of the aisle that will take that and run with it. I know there are Democrats who have made this argument too. It's silly. It's not. There's no significant academic evidence proving that ranked choice voting leads to any voter fraud.
Shit, maybe it might help. And when it comes to like picking homecoming ranked choice voting, that might help. Shout out to all the homecomings out there. You know, we had the Howard one, we had the Bowie State. Yeah, DC was lit. DC was lit.
Right.
Did you guys hit the clubs? Hen dog?
Actually, a few
You were
years
on U
ago,
Street or something, man?
I marched in Howard Homecoming.
You did?
Yeah, no,
There you go.
I was at Duke Ellington School for the Arts, and we marched. We did the whole Destiny's Child set list. It was great.
Let me find out. Let me find out you went to Duke Ellington. Wow. All right, let's get to Loudoun County. It's always some weird shit that happens in Loudoun. Um, I think Loudoun County is more crazier than Eastern Shore, but we're gonna, you know, Harris, Kamala Harris signed booby trap with shotgun shells raises safety concern in Virginia. Apparently, this guy, people were messing with his sign. The sign says it's in black. It has Kamala holding a banner, and the banner says, "I helped create this mess." And then on the left side of her says day one for me. And then on the right side, it says was January 2021. Apparently people tried to take down the sign. So maybe that's why old Billy Goat Gruff wanted to make some booby trap. Hey, if somebody wants to come on my property, you want to mess with my sign, I'm going to go home alone on your ass. What's up?
No, you can't be like booby traps are bad. We don't want anyone getting hurt. But no, the answer to speech
Bollocks.
you disagree with is more speech. It's not limiting speech. Um, I hope the Maryland Democrats have condemned this.
Did they? Let's see. Go ahead.
I don't know. They might not know, but no. Um, no one should be doing that.
Yeah, I mean it's wrong. It's disgusting. It's part of the reason why in this country we're so divided. And to be honest with you, like Doesn't matter what party it is. And I'm sure once we get to the University of Maryland,
It's despicable.
October 7th event, we'll talk about free speech. But it is. And again, in America, we settle our differences at the ballot box. We don't do this. And honestly, if somebody had gotten hurt, the owners of the property absolutely would have been held liable.
Mm.
Um, and it's also not a reflection on either campaign. Um,
It's not.
so no,
There's
I,
no
I don't think so.
reflection on the Trump campaign, man.
I mean, you can say that it is, but I think part
They're
of the
gonna
reason why
they.
you end
Uh-huh.
I think part of the reason you end up with people like Donald Trump to begin with is what has happened over the past 16 years of people being talked down to. I mean, I was just in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, with voters who, Democrats who were saying that they would have been. I mean, there was a poll that was conducted after the first assassination attempt, where 30% of Democrats said that they wanted Trump to be the country would have been better off if he was shot. I don't think any serious Democrat thinks like that. And
Well,
and
if
and
they're saying
it
that he's
should
the
be
next
condemned.
Hitler, of course, maybe somebody want to stop history.
Yeah, but it's part of a repeated pattern of I don't think it reflects on the leadership of both campaigns.
Your average American is not deranged.
Yeah, of course, of course.
She.
Yeah, like
Have you guys been to Walmart at 2 o'clock at night when it used to be open? Go ahead. Go ahead.
uh shall we yeah, no, I'm glad we're on the same page on this, that it's just unacceptable at the end of the day.
According to the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office, a political sign vandalism on private property is not new, and property owners have made efforts to protect their signs in the past. After examining the device, investigators determined it was an audible warning device, not explosive, and was not illegal. So he tried to scare the white people. That's what he was trying to do. But let's get to the uh real shit. Ish Talk TV. We got Nick Marks, Henry Marks in the house. Leave a like in the comment. It's free 99. Let's get to University of Maryland. That's where I live around. And Henry, I'm sorry, Nick, you go there or something like that?
Yes, I am involved in student government here. I am the president of Christians United for Israel. I am involved with the college Republicans on one campus. I'm very heavily involved in this campus's politics. So yeah.
I was apparently there was supposed to be this rally for Palestinian students. They're supposed to happen, but the campus shut them down like a
The
couple weeks
campus,
before. Hold on,
the,
hold
the
on, hold on, hold
campus
on, brother. Hold
shut.
on, brother.
Sorry,
Hold on, brother.
sorry.
Yeah, you can correct. You're gonna correct me. I'm probably wrong, but give me later. So they canceled it, and then the students they went to court about it, and they won. But what happened after? And I want to talk about campus protest when it comes to this issue, the election. What's up?
Okay, so to clarify, Students for Justice in Palestine, which is the main advocate for, or at least they claim to be the main advocate for enlightenment on the Palestinian cause on campus, announced on October 7th that they would be renting out McKeldin for a vigil that they marketed as interfaith for the 30,000 or so odd Palestinians that have died in the war. The university, when this was announced, the university got inundated with death threats from both Zionists and people that were sympathetic to the Palestinians, threatening the safety of our campus community. So the university basically canceled all events for October 7th. It didn't matter if they were pro-Israel, anti-Israel, a vigil or not. The Council on American Islamic Relations, which funnels a lot of money into the national SJP chapters, took the university to court. The court failed to prove narrow interest in the case. The judge issued an injunction that allowed SJP to have their event on McKeldin Mall. The University of Maryland Hillel, which is the Center for Jewish Life on campus, had a separate vigil for the 103 remaining hostages still in Gaza at Hornbeck Plaza across the road. There was a picture of me in the New York Times at the vigil that Hillel had. I also went to the SJP one out of curiosity. This raised a lot of questions about free speech on our campus, particularly around contentious topics, about the true motivations of Students for Justice in Palestine, about what attitudes about what SJP stands for, to the point that now student government in 2 weeks is about to hear another divestment bill asking the university to divest from companies and countries that engage in human rights violations, but it's mainly about the Israeli topic. I'm an Israel studies minor. I've been to Israel 3 times. This is an issue that is near and dear to my heart. My stepsister is at Columbia. She's a Jew. This war, I don't want to get too philosophical about it, but what I saw at the vigil, the Jews did not want to have one. They felt like they had to have one in response to SJP having a vigil. It was marketed as an interfaith vigil for people of all backgrounds. But, and you can find pictures of this, at the vigil they had massive pylons that said "Glory to our martyrs," and inscribed on that pylon were the names of terrorists who during the first and second intifadas murdered Israeli children. One of them was involved in a famous pizzeria bombing that killed over 20 people, bombings of buses that Yasser Arafat inspired. They also subsequently put out a statement saying that Israel has no right to exist, that the country is a
Who put
settler
this out?
colony. This was the University of Maryland Students for Justice in Palestine. The
They put up those
organization
signs. The students.
they put up the right to exist is the right to resist signs like this in the middle of the mall that students had to walk past going to class. Meanwhile, the Jewish vigil, which was not featuring shouting like they had, people had to go through security to get into, which raised Title VI concerns from the side of the Jewish community, saying that, hey, if I'm walking to class, I have to walk by and see SJP's massive vigil, but I don't necessarily have to walk through Hornbake to see the Jewish vigil. Now, my perspective on this is the court made the right decision. I do not think the university had a right to cancel the SJP event, as
Right.
despicable as I think the content might be. I think it was a huge win for the First Amendment. I agree with Henry, right? The way to win these battles is through more speech, to convince people.
Nick, you haven't heard me yet.
Oh, well, okay. Well, at least when you said earlier, the way the counter speech is
Leading.
with more speech, that's how I viewed this. Um, the things on campus have only deteriorated since then. Student government is about to go through another massive divestment fight. And I can say in the minds of most students that I talked to, they didn't really understand why SGP was having the event on the 7th. It could have easily been on the 8th or the 6th. And there was certainly nothing interfaith about the vigil. They had people with signs there basically condemning all of Israel and saying that Israelis are illegitimate people and should all be killed. So it was an emotional day. And the day culminated with Hillel throwing an event, a day of remembrance where Steny Hoyer came and spoke about the need for Hamas to return the hostages and for a long-standing peace to be brought between both Israelis and Palestinians. And so that's kind of what happened near the end. Again, I don't want to go on too much about this, but it's basically been the center of campus discussion for the past month.
Right.
So,
Henry, you want to jump in or?
Yeah. So I'm an exec board here at St. Mary's. I was the president of Jewish Student Union. I have seen, heard everything. And, at the end of the day, there is a very clear line, and I think most students know where it is. You are welcome to voice your opinion, no matter how much I disagree with it, no matter how much the state disagrees with it, no matter how much administration disagrees with it. The second you cross into overt threats or physical destruction of property, you have crossed a line. And the problem at the end of the day is that for however reasonable 95% of students are, there's always two or three or four that go too far. And, I think universities have done a good job of properly addressing those students. But what UMD did, canceling that rally was objectively, an overreach. And I too am glad that the court said that it didn't pass strict scrutiny. Are those different? Anyways, but frankly, everyone talks to me, my family, my friends. Oh, what are you seeing down here? Do you feel unsafe? Because I'm in one of the only swing districts in Maryland. I'm one of the very few Jewish students on campus. I have friends with vastly different opinions than I do. Not that I'm particularly pro-Israel, or um, but at the end of the day, I have always felt safe and respected on campus, and I'm sure the vast majority of students feel the same way.
So is there like well, at the University of Maryland, do Jewish students feel unsafe?
I mean, it depends who you're asking. We have had a wave of anti-Semitic incidents that have gone unanswered and unresponded to. I can't speak for every Jewish student. I have heard personally that some do and some don't. I'm not a Jew, so I can't speak for their community. SJP has targeted me personally, but I don't personally feel unsafe. I'm loud and I make my opinions on this known, so
Okay, well,
it's
let
a
me ask you.
consequence of me
So,
speaking.
were you ever at a pro-Palestine rally with a shirt, I don't know, saying "I'm an ally, I'm an ally," or something like that?
No, I just go to their rallies and listen.
So you're there to scope it out, scope things out.
Yeah, more or less. But I think
But
it's important to engage in the other side, especially on issues like
right,
this.
but when you go to your when you go to the Israel, the Zionist side, what are you doing there?
I was just there helping the volunteer, pretty much.
Oh, okay, all right, okay, all right. So the election and I'm thinking most of the students there, they are against genocide. So um when it comes to Henry, like I always curious about this. Like, how can most of these young Arab voters, they're very smart, they're in college, how could they still be voting for Kamala? Or are they that uncommitted? Or
So let's be clear about something. Being in college doesn't mean you're any smarter than someone who ain't there.
you're more in
Um,
tune to social stuff?
you'd think so. Uh, Look, I can tell you that even my most sort of ardently pro-Palestine friends, at the end of the day, see the writing on the wall and aren't willing to throw their vote away to genocide Jill. Um, they see, you know, everything are trade-offs. Although I don't think this is, they recognize that Trump will be far more supportive of Israel than Harris is, and just make the simple call. Those of them that aren't willing to make that simple call see the danger Trump poses to their friends who are immigrants or trans or gay or female and recognize that that threat is far bigger than any difference in Palestine policy.
Divesting, so you don't support the university divesting from working with Israel. You don't support that, huh?
No, not at all.
Okay. Uh, why is that?
It's the hypocrisy of the movement. The same people that push it are unafraid. They do not mention Turkey, which is shelling the Kurds right now and occupying North Cyprus. It does not mention the 1 million Uyghur Muslims that China currently has in concentration camps. It does not mention the seven. They won't even condemn Hamas. They won't even go as far
Well,
as
I
saying
think
that.
the students, they're worried about the university sending their
The university, let me give you some stats. The university has 10 times more investment in Tehran, 200 times more investment in Moscow, close to 30 times the investment in Beijing.
So you're saying
And also,
how come they're not saying
under state
divest from
law,
Putin? Yeah.
when Ukraine got invaded, I was on the Student Government Association legislature, and I wrote a bill that worked with ISSS to get Ukrainian families home. I did not ask this university to divest from Moscow. And also, if you look at the actors
And why
behind,
not?
when you look at the actors, well, first of all, the response with BDS is a bit different because BDS is illegal in the state of Maryland. Um, but
That's
if you
not
want to
right.
talk about, yes, it
Which is
is.
a blatant First Amendment violation.
Under, well, you can tell Westmore to rescind it then because he hasn't. Hogan signed the executive order, um, and West continued it. If you want to talk about what should have happened vis-a-vis Russia and Ukraine. There would have been a valid argument to push for it. But the BDS movement is very clear about what its goals are: to delegitimize Israel at any goal, at any stake. And SJP, which pushes it, says that. There are steps that they could take, right? If they wrote a resolution to Wes's office asking him to rescind the executive order, that's something that you could have an actual conversation about.
But why not divest from Russia?
You could have said it could have happened then, but they're not pushing for it. That's my point. They don't. So the
Yeah,
bill
but
is
why
framed as,
didn't you push to divest from
well,
Russia?
first of all, the Russian Student Association didn't want it, and Pine said that it would have been too divisive. To be honest with you,
Mm.
it was pushed from the university administration. If you want an honest answer, that's why it didn't happen.
Okay, no, yeah, no, I know where you're coming from. Uh, I appreciate your answer there.
Like I'm just gonna be honest. I hate Vladimir Putin. I think he's an evil person, but that's why I didn't go forward with that step. There were a lot of Russian students on campus who, when these conversations were happening, that's the response that is given. And it's a valid argument. It's a valid argument that I should have pushed for it. But at the same time, like, Pines was very clear about what that would do, as well. So
Well, just let you guys know that I'm not voting for Kamala. I'm not voting for Trump. I'm voting for Jill Stein. Am I wasting my vote, or am I a Putin apologist? Or I'm one of the reasons why I'm voting for Jill is she wants to stop the put an embargo for Russia. Stop the weapons. It's a genocide, man. But let's talk about third parties. The rise of third parties. Are you guys fucking with them or what? Are they legitimate or what's up?
The rise in third parties is the red wave of 2022.
yeah, yeah.
It's not that third parties are getting bigger, right? Remember, Ross Perot won like what, 18% of the vote in 1996. Um, it's just that each individual vote matters more today. That 0.1%, those
Yeah.
7,000 votes matter way, 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 way more today than they did 20, 30 years ago. And so if Jill Stein gets, I don't know exactly where
She's
she's
gonna
on
be
the
five.
ballot, she's not getting 5%. She gets 3% in Pennsylvania. It's a huge deal. Though some recent data has actually shown she's pulling more from Trump than from Biden, or from, ooh, that's a Freudian slip, from Harris. Brian, did you see who just endorsed her?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Nick,
Liz
you want to
Cheney?
take this one, or you want to let me drop it?
The former head of the Ku Klux Klan, David Duke,
No,
endorsed
no,
endorsed Jill Stein,
no,
and he said it. He said it was
no,
because
no, no,
he
no.
said he specifically said it was because of the Israel issue. He said it was because of the fact that she would be better to the Palestinians than Kamala. I agree with
Which
Henry
means
here,
worse to the Israelis.
which is also worse to the yeah. To Henry's point, is worse
Right.
to the Israelis.
He is not doing it because he loves Palestinians. He's doing it
I
because he's
thought
an
I
anti-Semitic
thought
asshole.
Dick Cheney was worse, but you're saying that
No,
that comes
called
to
himself the
show
Grand Dragon or some shit.
that shows how far we have came from this. She was riding high after she picked Waltz, and she's losing support from everybody, man. And then we
Well, we
got
can get
Trump.
as to why that is, but that's certainly not because of Jill Stein. Let's be clear that Jill Stein in this race is a negligible
Well,
fact. There was a poll that just came out
in
actually.
Michigan, a
Yeah,
lot of
she might tip the election to Trump. But you know why we don't have third parties? Because we live in a first past the post parliamentary or first past the post election system. There's something in political science called Duverger's law that effectively postulates that third parties are impossible because in a winner take all system,
mm,
it's just infeasible for them to exist.
If
And by the
only.
way, Jill Stein is the reason Donald Trump was president in 2016, which is why the DNC is
that's not
going after
true.
her. Yeah, absolutely. If you look at
What
the
about
vote margins
what
in
about the other guy that was in there?
Gary Johnson,
Yeah,
Gary Johnson mattered more in Pennsylvania than any other state. But
Bollocks.
if you look at Michigan, if you look at Wisconsin, the margins that Stein got um, did eat into Hillary's margins in those
Well,
states.
and you can actually tell that Kamala campaign, and they're getting nervous because they actually put an ad against Jill Stein. So, when it comes to this lead, man, what's the latest? How do you guys feel about Trump going to McDonald's? I think that was a good look, and he
You
has.
want to hear my honest opinion? I might eat crow in 2 weeks, but I don't think this election's going to be close.
Really? Well, it's going to be close vote total wise. Electorally, it may not be. Uh, but Washington Post just dropped a new set of polls, and they're B rated. They're not like New York Times good. Never have been. But they've got Harris +4 in Georgia, +2 in Michigan, +2 in Pennsylvania, +3 in Wisconsin.
I will say, look at the field dates. Those polls were taken over a period of 2 weeks, from 9:30 to like 2 days ago. This race started to tighten in the first 2 weeks of October.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the worrying about polls is kind of BS, just because
Yeah, I agree.
Republicans have flooded the field with like
Fake ones,
all sorts of Trafalgar
memes.
BS, and I mean, pollsters always close it down, narrow margins down the way so that they can claim, yeah, we got within a 4 point margin. Either way, the vote totals are going to be decided by what, like 200,000 votes across 6 states. So I said it a few weeks ago, and I'll say it again today. Like, don't check the polls. If you care, go out, uh, you know, donate, sign up to phone bank, go to democrats.org. But refreshing your polls ain't going to do anything.
I actually agree with Henry on this one, but I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate to the right wing pollster idea. The most accurate polls in 2020 were Atlas Intel, Rasmussen, which I don't buy at all. Rasmussen is terrible. Trafalgar, which underestimated Trump by about, like, there's about a 4 point miss in the polling average when Trump is on the ballot. It's unique to other Republicans, right? 2022 was the aberration, but I don't like to compare midterms to presidential cycles, especially when Trump is on the ballot, because there are voters that only vote for Donald Trump. They're the low propensity 0 out of 4 voters, the 1 out of 4 voters, 2 out of 4 voters, right? That's a lot of these candidates in 2022 underperformed, A, because they were just terrible candidates and Trump endorsed them, and two, because they often ran away from Trump. If you look at Dr. Oz in the last weeks of the campaign, he actually ran away from the Trump record. And that's when he had the opportunity to close the gap with Fetterman, right? And he ended up getting crushed. Um, and then you had closer elections like Carrie Lake, who was always a terrible candidate, but she almost won the governorship in Arizona. So I think the thing is with the polls is that you have to look at the averages. And the fact of the matter is that this race has tightened. This race has tightened considerably, and Trump is a strong closer. He closed in 2016. The same poll group that you put out said Biden was going to win Wisconsin by 17 points in 2020. He won it by I think one or less than one or something like this.
Yeah, it
So
was
my
like,
my point is, polling with Donald Trump is very difficult. I
Mm.
got this when I was in Lancaster. Trump voters do not like to respond to polls for whatever reason. They're harder to pick up, and they tend to get filtered out by RV and LV screens, both of them, which is why the internal polls from both campaigns, if you listen to what people have said and what has been leaked by Democratic Senate candidates because they're worried, you have Bob Casey and Tammy Baldwin running ads with Donald Trump in them. And that's because their internals show that Harris is in real trouble, not only just in the Sun Belt, but in the Rust Belt, which is why I think if you look at her, what her closing argument is basically Trump is old and senile, and the policies are downstream from that. Hillary tried to do the same thing in 2016, and she lost. And I think Harris is
Hillary
a
got
weaker candidate.
October surprised. Hillary got sank by Jim Comey. Trump just had 1,900 pages detailing in excruciating detail how he aimed to overturn an election. Now, I don't think that's going to matter a ton, but I think there are about 12 different factors pulling the polls each direction, arguments you could make for polling errors one way or another. And essentially, it's just a black box. We're going to pull some numbers out and see where things lay on November 5th.
Yeah, no, I agree. Look, the Harris campaign should be running away with this race, right? She should
Right.
be 20 points up. And here's the point. Trump is a flawed candidate. Everybody has an opinion of him. Sure, the fundamentals, if you look at the New York Times polls, Trump polls better than Harris on 3 out of 4 of them, whether that be the economy, immigration, and national security. But she has a natural advantage with the gender divide. Women tend to vote more than men. She has an advantage on, especially with those higher educated voters. She has so much money that she has a national GOTV operation that Trump doesn't have, and yet she's not. Politico ran a piece about this. The Democrats are infighting with themselves because they don't, especially in Pennsylvania. That's the ball game. To me, it's weird that they're saying that the get out the vote operation in Philly is not great. And I don't know why Shapiro is not going out of his way.
They said it's not going great.
Politico.
Oh,
Politico ran a piece that basically said the Democrats in Philly think they're going to win the state, which is at odds with what I've heard. I know Fetterman has come out and said that he thinks Trump's going to win PA.
but
Shapiro
Henry
says
was
that
just
Harris is,
there.
so it's kind of one of those things to where it's a close state, right? Republicans have voter registration advantages right now, and the early vote numbers, I caution against reading early vote tea leaves, by the way. I think they're very inaccurate. I think like you can read them somewhat. Republicans have good data, Democrats have good data. They look good in PA, they look terrible in Arizona. Kari Lake's not going to win that Senate seat regardless of how much Trump carries it by. So it's kind of like
fuck Kari Lake.
It's kind of one of those things to where the polls, I agree with Henry, are you can follow trends, right? Maybe not numbers. You can follow trends, and that's what I look at. How is the race trending with 2 weeks out? And I would rather be Trump right now, but at the same time, Harris has the money. She has the money.
They're already picking out who they're going to blame for when she loses. They're going to blame black men and Arabs, and they're going to call the black men misogynistic haters. Obama had to. What did you guys see that the Obama effect didn't work anymore?
I saw what Obama said.
It didn't work anymore. And he doesn't talk to Jewish voters like that. He doesn't talk to Latino voters like that. How come he's not talking to Indian voters like that? She's half Indian, right? So I think Jill Stein and Duke, what's his name? Duke what?
David Duke.
David Duke. And who else? Jill Stein.
Yeah.
Guys, go ahead and vote for her, guys.
Stein.
I'm not voting for a genocide. I can't vote for Kamala. I can't vote for Trump. It's over. But thank you for your time, guys. Henry, tell the people where they can reach you, brother.
Yeah, you can find me at Twitter, Henry Samuel Marks, and come for bad baseball takes and even worse political ones.
Tremendous. Nick, tell the people where they can find you, man.
You can follow me at nmarks171 on Twitter. You can find me at n.marks_17 on Instagram. It's been nice, and I hope to come back. This was a fun little podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian.
Dealing with the G. You guys stay black. Peace out.
We from the bottom, come from nothing. Who say they say we say we know. They say you running plays, that's it talk. You say you getting paid, that's it talk. You see me with my babe, that's it talk. The money in the way, that's it talk.